interviews. And I'll start with why video interviews are being more widely utilized by businesses. Well, the benefit for companies conducting their recruitment process in this way and now implementing video interviews is they can interview a lot more people, first of all. So you typically find video interviews early on in the process, maybe after a psychometric test or after an application. It allows them to interview high volumes of people because, as you can imagine, especially if it's a pre-recorded platform, they can send this out to thousands and thousands of people and they can get the recording back, as opposed to having to bring, thousands of people into an office to potentially come and interview each of them one by one. So they can interview higher volumes and they have less people that maybe have to be involved. And that relates back to the cost as well. So you're saving things like travel costs, so paying, expenses for people to come into your office. You're saving costs in terms of manpower, so the amount of people that you would have to have in the office to interview people. So investing in this technology allows you to have higher volumes of people being interviewed at any one point. You can also utilize technology to support your decisions. And we'll talk about this as we go through the session, but some platforms, particularly your pre-recorded interview platforms, actually now utilize artificial intelligence. And you can actually set them to look for particular traits in people from interviews, and they can actually make decisions on your behalf and really reduce the number of candidates that you may have to review afterwards. And the last thing is, these videos can be watched and assessed multiple times. So again, if it's pre-recorded, you are not just going to have the people in the room, the one or two people in the room or on the call that are interviewing that are going to be able to assess that person. Rather than just going by the two people's notes, you can actually send this to multiple people to get their feedback on that person. So it can be, a more structured and a better, well-assessed way to interview people. So for businesses, there's lots of benefits: the volumes, the costs, the technology, and also just making sure that multiple people can access that. And you can re-watch questions that are asked in those interviews. So there's going to be two types of interviews that you can potentially undertake. They're either going to be live or they're going to be pre-recorded. So when it comes to live, as you can imagine, this is really no different to a traditional face-to-face. It's going to be live. You're going to have your interviews in front of you. You're going to have set questions that they're going to be asking, and you're going to have to answer those in real time. So there's going to be no preparation period beyond what you would have done before going into that interview. And they're going to be on platforms that you're already quite familiar with. So Skype, it could be Google Hangouts, it could be Zoom like we're on today. There's multiple different platforms that could be used. So I think that there's no real difference there in terms of a traditional face-to-face, but we'll talk about how you can maximize the look and feel of how you answer questions on the screen. Now, if it's pre-recorded, it will be slightly different, because when it's pre-recorded, the first thing is you could have time-limited questions. So typically, you may have a question pop up for 30 seconds, and then you have 2 minutes to answer a question. So this changes it ever so slightly, because in a traditional interview, a live or face-to-face interview, if someone asks you a question, you're not going to have a limit on how much you should talk or how little you should talk. Where the pre-recorded may give you a set time to cram in everything that you want to. With that in mind, it also means that you submit the recorded answer onto the platform. So again, you're not getting immediate feedback from somebody interviewing you. So you need to submit a recorded answer, and you don't really know how well or bad you necessarily performed in real time. And typically, external providers are used as part of this. I've got 4 examples of some of the most common platforms that are used by employers. So you've got Spark Hire here as an example. So companies like Volkswagen, IKEA, BAE Systems, you use them as their platform. Hire-Vue is very popular. Companies like PwC, Unilever, Vodafone will use them. VidCruiter is another example. So I think companies like Samsung, KPMG have used those in the past. So you can see when you go onto these, when you do your research and learn about the platform, you can actually identify which employers do use those. And they've got some fantastic functions for businesses to access. And the last thing, as I've already picked up on, is the pre-recorded could utilize artificial intelligence to assess you. So that's not definite in all cases, but we'll talk a bit about that and how you can beat the bots, as it were, in terms of if artificial intelligence does come into play. But it's another way for businesses to assess you with that AI technology. But in essence, if you want to be successful in not just a video interview, I suppose it's any interview, it's about bringing together two things. So if you can master your verbal, and we talk about, you know, answering questions, so exactly what you're saying and the points that you're coming across, plus the non-verbal, and that's going to be really important when it comes to video interviews, then you're going to have a lot of success in securing these roles. So again, it's not just about what you say, it's how you say it and how you come across when you're saying that. So the verbal and non-verbal, bringing those together is going to give you your ultimate success in these video interviews. So how we start this is we need to prepare. So before we even get to the video interview, like anything that you would do, so any job that you're applying to, any face-to-face interview that you go to, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's video interview, you need to prepare, you need to plan, and you need to practice. So your preparation, your planning, and your practice is so key to you being successful. If you rush into something and don't do this preparation, this planning and practice, then you're really going to struggle with your success rate going into the interview. So make sure that you prepare, you plan, and you practice. So what do you need to do that? Well, the main things that employers are looking for and expecting from you when you go through the recruitment process are these four traits here. So number one is being commercially aware. So being a well-informed candidate, understanding the company, the role, the industry that you're applying to, and demonstrate that knowledge through the recruitment process. So as you can imagine, that's going to be important in an interview, isn't it? Because you're going to have to talk about why you've chosen that company. You could have a question, for example, why have you applied to work for us? Why not one of our competitors? What changes and challenges do you see in our industry over the next 3 to 5 years? So doing your research and building up that commercial understanding of the company and wider business in general is really going to be important to you be successful. The second point is having a developed level of soft skill. So having the skills that an employer is expecting you to have to be successful in that company. So, you know, being an effective team player, being an effective communicator, an influencer. So having the right skills that business wants and demonstrating them through the recruitment process. So from your application or your CV through to an interview when you're asked specific questions about skills that you have, so your competency-based questions, and then potentially going on to an assessment center where you're demonstrating those skills in real time. And the last 2 points really come together is coming across as enthusiastic and passionate through that process. So really selling to an employer that is the company, that's your dream company, you know, that's the company of your choice, and coming across in that way. So from doing your research, building up that commercial and in the company, demonstrating that you've got the specific skills that they're looking for will naturally make you come across as more passionate. But that also comes across in your body language, you know, your eye contact, all of these things. So we'll talk about that throughout the process. So if you can tick these traits, you can do your research, you can develop your skills, you can come across as passionate, and you can demonstrate this is the company that I want to work for. This is the role that I want to do. This is the qualification that I want to study for. That's really going to help and support you in the process. So the first thing that we need to do is go and do our research. So when we talk about our research, the first point I've already alluded to, go and research that company, build up your commercial awareness. So look at the job description, first of all, you know, look at the key traits that they're expecting from you to have. But beyond that job and that role, what can you learn about the wider organization? How does that role that you're applying to fit into that wider organization and other business functions? Beyond that company, you know, what can you learn about the market and the industry that they trade within? So who are their main competition? You know, what is happening in that industry, especially now, if you're applying to a job and we're in the middle of this pandemic, what's the impact on that industry? What is this pandemic, you know, what impact is that having on them? What rules and regulations are within that industry that may impact them? What's happening in the future? So become an informed candidate. Find something from doing your research into that company to really give you a reason to be passionate about wanting to apply for them. Give them that reason, give them that incentive. The next thing that you need to do is look at that recruitment process. So what is the entire recruitment process? What will I be assessed on? So again, if it's a video interview, okay, great. If I'm doing a video interview, is it live or is it pre-recorded? Okay, if it's pre-recorded, what platform does this company use? You know, are there particular questions that I'm going to be asked? Can I research and find out what questions I'm going to be asked as part of this interview? If I get through the video interview, what are the next steps for me? Do I have to go to an assessment center? Do I have to do psychometric tests? So research that recruitment process, because that's going to allow you to prepare. What you also need to do is identify the skills. So this is the soft skills. Identify the skills that are in demand. You can, of course, review the job description. That's going to be the first place that you should go to, because they always list off the key skills that they expect you to have to be successful in the role. But you can also go onto the company website and learn about the culture, learn about the behaviors that they expect their employees to have. And those skills, if you can weave them into your interview, into your applications around the general company skills and behaviors, that's really going to benefit you as well. So go and research all of that. And then, of course, you need to prepare for interview questions. So go away and practice and write. So, you know, think about what type of questions will I be asked? Are they going to be competency-based questions? So questions about skills. Give me an example where you played a key role in a project. You know, give me an example where you had to deal with a difficult colleague in a project. So these are all skills based. Now you will know what the skills are because you've just done that in the previous step. You've developed and you've identified the skills that are in demand. So now think about, how would I answer a question if it was asked about, you know, give me an example where you played a key role in a team. So think about, how do I answer a competency based question? So you use things like the STAR technique as an example to write out your answers. Are they going to ask me strength-based questions? So how can I prepare for those? So strength-based questions are all about your passion, your motivation to work for a particular company in a particular role to do a particular qualification. So how can I answer a question to really come across as enthusiastic and passionate? And that can relate back to some of that research that you've done potentially. Again, they're also going to test your company and your industry knowledge. So be ready for that, to preempt some questions that will be asked. And think about some example answers that you could give to questions. And of course, like I've already said, that interest and that passion is really going to be key. So prepare for all of these potential question types that you could be asked. But building up that commercial awareness and developing the skills and identifying the skills that are in demand are really going to help you to do that. And you can go and practice lots of general interview questions because you can find lots and lots of them online. And see, how would I answer this question to stand out? So, you know, tell me why you want to work here. What's one of your biggest weaknesses, as an example? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? So that's like a passion question. What motivates you at work? What else have we got? Describe a time when you needed to develop an unconventional approach to solve an existing problem. So there's lots of questions that you can find online, and that can really get you into the rhythm of answering questions in a good way. And that's really what it's about, is practice. But when it comes to video interviews, not only do you practice answering questions anyway or writing down, I want you to go and record yourself answering interview questions. So get yourself on your phone or your laptop, hit record, and practice answering some of those common interview questions. Or if you've done your research, you may find on Glassdoor, for example, people have been through an interview with that company and they've actually provided some of the actual questions that you could be asked by that employer. So start to answer them. How would I answer that question? Record yourself. Once you've recorded yourself, consider how you look. How do I look on camera? How do I sound? Am I engaging with the camera? Not only consider what you're saying, think about how you're saying this as well. So how am I coming across? How am I saying this in the right way? Is it clear? Is it concise? Is it going to the point? How does my voice sound? You know, how are my tone? How are my expressions? How are my gestures? You want to sound enthusiastic. You don't want to be quite monotone. If you can, get maybe people at your university, get friends, get colleagues to review the videos and give you feedback. Get other people saying, honestly, how do I look? How do I sound? You know, do I look ridiculous? Is there anything I could change? Is it my body language? Should I change how I've answered that question? And also consider, are you answering questions in a timely manner? So like we've already said, is some video interview platforms, if it's pre-recorded, will typically, on average, it's about 2 minutes that they give you to answer a question. So are you answering questions roughly in about 2 minutes? If you can stick to that time, that's really going to benefit you. Next tip is to check your tech. So check your technology. The last thing that you want to happen is your technology, your internet, your laptop, whatever that may be, to let you down partway through your interview. Worst nightmare. You've done all of this preparation and then your battery runs out or something like that. You don't want that to happen. So check your technology. So do you need to install or download anything to access the video interview platform? So for example, today, if you haven't been on Zoom before, you have to potentially download an app before you can come and access this. It could be the same with things like Hire-Vue or Spark Hire. Make sure that you, well in advance of the time that you plan to do your interview, you go and check out that technology. You make sure that you've downloaded anything that you need to. Next thing you need to do is check your internet speed. So you can actually just Google check internet speed, and there's lots of platforms that tell you how fast your internet speed is at that current time. If there's any issues and you feel there could potentially be any issues, can you move closer to your router? So typically, as you know, if you move closer, you're going to have a better strength of signal. If you live with people, so housemates, family, kids, I don't know, whoever you work with, let them know. Say, look, for the next hour, I'm on this interview. Can you please not use the Wi-Fi? So turn off your Wi-Fi, turn off your phones, so I don't get kicked out. So make sure you get housemates to turn off everything. Some of these may seem, absolutely, common sense, but some people forget some of these things. So, plug in your device to make sure your battery doesn't run out. So make sure that you've got it in there. And the other thing is, if you've got using a laptop and it's plugged in, you can change your settings on your laptop to make sure that it's running at high performance. So I'd always recommend that as well, because that means that the quality of your video will come through better. Close any unnecessary web browser tabs and applications, so that to close everything down, your emails, close everything, and make sure your sole focus is on that platform. Turn your phone off unless you're using it to record, of course, but if you've got your phone by your side, make sure that doesn't vibrate and put you off partway through, or you've got some ridiculous ringtone that sets off. So remember to do all of that things. And before start, check your sound. So consider the sound quality and how that's going to come out. So is your sound working okay on your laptop? Do you need headphones? Do you need maybe to purchase a small microphone to make sure that that sound quality is really on point for you? That will be really important, right? You want to come across as clear and concise. So make sure that your technology is not going to let you down in that respect. The next thing is going to be to control your environment. So not only do you need to check your tech, think about the things that are around you. So I'm sure everyone has seen this guy before. He was on BBC News, and his kid come in, and then the baby come in, and then his wife came in and dragged the kids out. So as you can imagine, you don't want that to happen to you midway through an interview. So your environment is just as important as your technology. So starting with the lighting, you can close curtains if you want to. The reason that we talk about sometimes maybe closing curtains and using lights is natural light can sometimes change and affect your image. So you could start your interview with a bright sunny day, and then partway through, clouds come over and you're in darkness. So it could affect your image. So if you can close your curtains and put your lights on, it may actually help you. But you can test that out, right? You can record yourself and see which lighting works best. The main thing that you want to make sure is visible, though, is your face. That's going to be the key, right? You want them to see you. So in terms of your lights, put lights in front of you. So don't have lights behind you on the side. Put them in front of you. So make sure that you and your face are clearly visible. So as an example, we've got this guy here. So he's in his room. You can see he's got his light over in the far left corner. It's like he's in a dark room almost. It might not look dark to him, but actually when it comes out on video, that's how it looks. But then if you change that to put a light in front of him, turn off that light in front of him, you can see the big difference. So your lighting is going to be really important. The next thing is your background. So again, make sure you have a neat and tidy background. So if you're in your bedroom, make sure, if your bed's in the background, make sure your bed's made. Make sure you've not got, empty plates and food and rubbish all around. Please do tidy up. Make it look professional and respectable. You can have things in the background. So this is interesting. Some people say have a completely plain background. Some people say put things in there to show your personality and your interest. I tend to think have a middle ground. So it can be plain, because the main thing is you need to be the focus. Some people will have it plain. You may want to have a plant, maybe you've got a nice picture, but you want to be the focus of it. You don't want people being distracted by an amazing picture that you have in the wall, or maybe your book collection, or something interesting in the background. You want them to focus on you and what you're saying, not something that's behind you. So consider that. Make sure that you're the focus. Again, if you live with people, not only tell them to stop using the Wi-Fi, tell them about the interview and say, make sure you stay quiet. So, no screaming, no shouting, do not disturb. So at the minute I'm doing this webinar, my kids are downstairs because we're in lockdown, we're homeschooling. I said to them, I've given them their lunch, their mum time. So, just be quiet, no screaming, no shouting. I'm doing a session. If you've got pets, make sure they don't disturb you. So, typically, you typically see cats running across screens and dogs jumping in or barking. So try and take that into consideration as well. So control that environment to make sure, again, you're focused. And interestingly, when it comes to the environment, so the lighting, the look of you, and the sound and the audio, 80% of candidates record with bad lighting and or poor audio. So how interesting is that? 80% of candidates will typically have either a bad visual or bad sound. So if you can be within that 20%, you've got good sound and good lighting, it can really make a good difference to the impression that you put onto an employer. The next thing is your non-verbal. So, okay, we prepared for interview questions. We've got our lighting, we've got our tech in place. What about the non-verbal side of an interview? So the first thing is to dress the part. So make sure that you wear something appropriate to the role and company that you're applying to. So for a lot of business roles, that probably would be, business wear, so a suit or something smart. But it could depend. It depends on what industry that you're going into. So ASOS is a great example. You may be working in finance in ASOS, where they're a lot more laid back with their dress sense. But if you're in doubt for an interview, I would always go smart as possible, right? Because it's a professional look. You're putting yourself across in a professional light. So make sure you dress appropriately to the role in the company. When it comes to your camera, make sure that it's at eye level. So a lot of times when you're at your laptop, you're typically looking down into the camera or looking over it, or sometimes you're under it in some respects. So in a real interview, you're going to be face-to-face with someone. You're going to be at their eye level. So try to replicate that in a video interview. So get your camera up to your eye level. So that could be adjusting your chair, maybe putting some books underneath your laptop. So try to replicate that as much as possible. Next thing is to have eye contact. So look at the camera and not yourself. So with a live interview, it's slightly easier, because what you can do is when you're answering the question, you can look into your camera. When they're talking to you, you can nod, you can smile, and you can look at them in the screen. With a pre-recorded, it is quite easy for you to start looking at yourself and not looking into the camera, because you want to see, well, how do I look? How am I sounding? But actually that recording then, it doesn't come across very well because you're not looking at the person. So try to focus and look at the camera. If you find that challenging, because, for example, my camera on my laptop is literally a dot, a tiny dot, you can put a picture or a sticky note behind your laptop. So that can give you something to focus on. So you can look at that picture and people will think that you're looking at them when you're actually looking at that sticky note. But try to look into that camera, because again, not only are you now eye level, you are looking directly into that recruiter's face. So you're building up some of that rapport that maybe you're missing because you're not face to face with them and you're not there in person. And of course, use positive body language. So throughout the interview, keep your mood upbeat and convey optimism with your body language. So we talk about, that passion, that enthusiasm. So try to come across as passionate and enthusiastic as you go through. So one way to do this is with your posture. So sit up in your chair properly, have your back straight, have your shoulders open, don't be crossing your arms. When you're talking, use, as well as your eye contact, you can use hand gestures. Don't get too carried away, but you can use hand gestures to really demonstrate your enthusiasm and really to emphasize particular points. Make sure that you're smiling as well. So when you're trying to talk, you know, do smile and show that positivity and show that friendliness in how you're answering an interview question. All of that body language, that positive body language, is really going to help you come across well through the recording. So moving on to the actual interview itself. So once you get into the interview, this is particularly for pre-recorded interviews. Start by reading the instructions carefully. So there'll be a list of instructions, because this will tell you important information about how to use the platform. So it will, you know, these are the buttons that you can use. This is how you can potentially go back. This is where your settings are. This is where you test your sound. This is your timings. It's going to give you everything there. So the picture that I have on the screen is actually an example of the Hire-Vue platform. And this is an example of one of the questions here. You can see you've got your timing at the top of how long you've got to respond. You can click when you've done answering. You can see how your sound quality is. So again, take the time to really read the instructions carefully, so you know that you can go through quite easily. What you typically have as well with pre-recorded is you have practice questions. So they give you an opportunity at the beginning to use the platform and test it out, really. So use this opportunity. Some people just skip through and think, well, I just want to get on with it. But this gives you an opportunity to test your light, your sound, your background on their platform. So you may have done this before on your laptop or on your phone, but how does it now look on their platform? So test all of that. Test your body language across. Is this how I really planned it? And to make sure that you tweak all of that. You can also test with your timers as well, so you can see how it looks when you click buttons and things like that. You can use notes as well. So you can make use of notes, but only do it subtly. So don't spend the whole time reading off a piece of paper. You know, have a few notes, maybe bullet points that you want to do just to remind you. And what you can also do is put these behind the camera. So again, you may have more sticky notes that you want to stick to the top of your laptop that have key points that you want to remember. And if they're at the top, close to the camera, you know, your eyesight is not going to move too far away from the camera at any one point. So use notes, but don't read from anything, and keep them minimal. Another thing is how you should end a question. And some people find this quite challenging with pre-recorded, because you sort of say, you finish and you say, yeah, well, yeah, that's it. And then you lean into your laptop to hit that you're done with it. So it sort of ends quite abruptly, and the last thing they see is you scrambling around to click the end button. One tip that I have is always relate it back to the role in the question. That's a nice way, really, just to sum it up. So if they asked you the question, as an example here, why have you chosen to apply to ABC as an XYZ? And then you can say, I've done my research, I've got these skills, whatever that you want to say. And then you can say, and that's really the real reason why I'm perfectly suited to working with ABC in the role of XYZ. So again, you're just really just bringing it full circle back to the question, rather than a very abrupt ending to the question that you've been asked. The next thing, and the last thing that we're going to end on, is really talking about how you can beat the bots, and how do you beat technology? Or so when I beat technology, how can you make sure that technology chooses you over others? So like I've already said at the beginning, is some employers and platforms will utilize artificial intelligence in their video interviews. So some of the things that they may look for are, firstly, things like content in your answers. So there could be keywords that they're expecting you. So they will tell the technology, look out for teamwork, and look out for influencing, look out for our main cultures. So you've done your research. So use the keywords in the job description and from the employer website, and maybe repeat some of these in your questions. So in your answers to questions. So use some of those keywords so they come across. So if a company's got particular behaviors, use some of those behaviors in your answers, so then the bot will pick them up. Another thing that it may look for is intonation. So when I talk about intonation, if you don't know what that is, that's sort of the structure of your voice. So it may assess the tone, the pitch, the pace of your voice. To give you an example as to why they would do this, if a business is looking for an enthusiastic, passionate, good communicator, they can look at the highs and lows in your voice to see, have they got an interesting voice? You know, are they changing the pace and the pitch to keep me engaged? If you've got a very monotone voice, so I want to work for you because I think I will be great at your company and I'm an amazing communicator. If you've got that very monotone pitch to your voice, you're not showing any, any highs and lows to your voice, any excitement in your voice. So that can work against you. Another thing that it can look for is body language. So again, if they're looking for good communicators, people that are passionate, friendly people, things like smiling, it will assess that. Is this person smiling? Can we see their teeth as they're talking? Can we see a smile from them? Are they giving us eye contact? Are they using, body language? So use your hands, like we spoke about, have eye contact directly with that because it will assess that. And another tip that I've seen some people talk about is repeating the question as part of your answer. Because the bot and the technology is set up to look at keywords, if you use the words from the question, then that may give you automatic ticks. If they ask you, I don't know, what's one of the key challenges in this business? So I think there are a lot of key challenges to your business, and they are, as an example. So what you're doing is you're just hitting some of those keywords that they're expecting from you. So bear that in mind as well of technology assessing you in certain ways, and there's some of those areas that you can use to support you. And that is, I've got a couple more things to show you, but just to really go back full circle to where I started to say, if you want further support before we go into questions, go and access the Grad Club. You've got the business game on there. You've got various videos to access. You've got live jobs that you can go and apply for, and you'll probably have to do a video interview in the near future. And this recording will go on to there afterwards. And you can also stay in touch with me directly. So you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on LinkedIn if you want to. So I post lots of content of what I'm doing and some of my video content on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to go and do that. But what I'll do, just to wrap things up, I'm going to show you one more thing and then we'll go into questions. So hopefully you can see YouTube. Can everyone see this now? If you can just give me a quick yes in the chat box, that would be great. Can everyone see the YouTube video? Okay, perfect. What I need to do very quickly is okay. So I'm just going to quickly play this video and hopefully this will summarize everything that we've just spoken about. Technology has changed a lot of things over the years, and interviews are no different. Video interviews are becoming more commonplace with recruiters. They could be unavoidable in the near future if you're applying for a job. Whether it's live or pre-recorded, you still have to prepare like you would for any interview. So doing your research about the role, the organisation, the industry to really demonstrate your knowledge and passion for the job that you're applying to. And of course, you still need to go and practice interview questions as you would. But beyond this, here are my tips specific to video interviews. Tip number 1 is to control your environment. Please do not be okay. So that stopped partway through. Never mind. We can I will send you a link to that so you can look at that another time. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully this has been useful. I'm now happy to take any questions that you might have. So let me know if you've got any questions. I'm happy to take them now. I'll see if there's any in the chat box already. I think there was a couple that come through. So a general question about jobs. Am I seeing a change in the number of vacancies being added as a result of COVID-19? Yes, I am, Richard. I have seen a reduction, unfortunately, but I suppose it would be expected. I did do a video about that. That's on the Grad Club. I am seeing a reduction in jobs, but there are still jobs out there. So we are still adding jobs weekly onto the Grad Club. So there are still opportunities. But what I'm also finding is because there are limited jobs, some people are just not bothering in applying. So actually it can be quite a good time. So even though there are limited jobs, there are less people actually applying. So there is benefit to people continuing with that search. And it's also a great time to start preparing for the recruitment process, of course. I've had another question. Some video interviews give you 24 hours to complete the interview. Do you know if companies can see what time you do it and may therefore discount people if they left it to the last minute? No, not at all. So they give you 24 hours just so you can find a time that's suitable for you to do it properly. They're also giving you a bit of time there to really, hone in anything that you need to. So time to check the technology, to check the platform, to make sure that your sound and everything's okay. And like I said, to take into regard, families, use of Wi-Fi. So no, when you take that, doesn't really matter within that 24 hours, as long as you take it. We've got a question around what about the SEMA exemptions allowed for the accounting and finance degree? How many are there if it had been part of an interview question? So you're asking how many exemptions. So your exemptions for your degree would depend on what university you're currently studying at. So depending on your uni, and I can take that offline, you may have different exemptions depending on that. But it's a good question. If you're applying to a role where they're offering SEMA, then not only talk about the passion to want to work for that company, talk about the passion that you have to actually study the professional qualification. So talk about SEMA, talk about your exemptions and say, look, I've already studied this. I'm looking forward to going on to the next stage after I've got my exemptions. It's a really good point. Thank you. Somebody said it was a good presentation. Any tips on how to avoid sounding rehearsed, specifically when over preparing for an interview? So I think you sort of partly answered it there, is don't over prepare. It's important to practice. It's definitely important to practice. But when you're practicing, don't script an answer. So you can write an answer down, but I don't want you to script it. So we're not actors, right? So we're not actors. So we don't need to learn something word for word, because what will happen if you learn something word for word is if you become very nervous partway through that interview, you may forget part of your answer and then the structure's gone. So what you want to do is when you're practicing, have the gist of it. So for example, this presentation, okay, it's not scripted. I know the gist of the content and I talk around that. So next time when I deliver this, it will be quite similar, but it won't be exactly the same. And that's what you have to do. What are the key points that I want to answer? And then how would I answer that more naturally? So that's why things like bullet points are really important. So rather than having a full script, try to bullet point answers. So you won't come across as sounding, like you said, sounding scripted. But your practice and recording yourself, you can see how you come across. And then send that to people. Send that to people and say, how do I sound? Do I sound natural? Am I coming across quite negatively? That video that I did try to show you, I've sent that to colleagues and I've asked them before I've sent this out, how is it? Is it any good? Is it okay? Because that's important to get feedback from people. Any tips on Hassan? Okay, we've done that one. What if I do not have any plain background? So you can always see something behind you like a kitchen or other things. Again, you don't have to have a plain background, not at all. The main thing to remember is if it's not plain, there's not going to be anything that's too distracting to the recruiter. So if you're in your kitchen, make sure someone's not going in and making a sandwich or making a cup of tea. Just make sure there's not too many things that's going to remove from their attention. So they're not looking at things and thinking, oh, what's that there? So you don't have to have a plain background. It just needs to be something that's not too distracting. Somebody just asked a question. I've noticed online that you have to pay to join as a member of the SEMA grad club. The students get any discount? So to answer, you don't have to pay to go into the grad club. You have to register, but it's free. You shouldn't have to pay. So if you're being asked to pay, you must be going to the wrong link. The link is here on this slide here. So gradclub.semaglobal.com. Okay. So you don't have to pay at all to go onto the SEMA grad club. That's something that we provide to you free of charge. And that's where this recording will go. Somebody's got, sometimes there might be a case that a question comes up which we don't have any idea about, or maybe missed out. How do we manage such a situation? Given we have, so a good question. So yeah, you're quite right. Is questions may come up that maybe you're not expecting, and then that can come across. But I think the main thing is if you've done your research into the company, you know the skills. The questions are always going to be based around those things: your understanding of the business, your passion to work for the company and go into that role, and about the skills that you have that are relevant to that role. So even though you might not know exactly what you're going to be asked, you know roughly what you're going to be asked. So prepare for all of those scenarios. If they're listing 5 skills on their website: communication, team working, leadership, influencing, I would prepare an answer for all of those. So look at that, consider all of those options. And I'm sure you'll find an answer to it. Somebody struggles with keeping up with the smile and eye contact during the interview. So the eye contact, I think I already said, is put a post-it note and draw a little picture, an eye, a face, slightly above your camera. And if you're more comfortable, look at that. So look at the picture as opposed to the camera. In terms of the smiling, it doesn't have to be like a massive smile. It doesn't have to be a big cheesy grin as you're talking, but it's sort of just, just a small smile, a positive sort of, facial expression. So you're not just completely, looking unhappy about what's going on. So that's all that is just a small smile, not a big cheesy grin, because that can come across as really ridiculous as well. Somebody said, do you think the citizen status or visa sponsorship are factors that might affect the outcome of the interview, especially for international students? I would hope when it comes to visas that would have been highlighted by the employer before you've started that application. So when you go to apply for that company, typically they would say at that point, we do not, or we do sponsor international students. Or they say, have a right to work in England, in the UK, or wherever that may be. I do appreciate, though, that sometimes employers do not mention that until partway through the process. So really, they don't want to say that they don't sponsor visas, but they will sponsor you if you're a good candidate. So really, the long way around to answering that is no, that won't affect the outcome of the interview. But sometimes it could be used as a response if they don't want to take you to the next stage. But if you're good enough, they will sponsor you. Thanks for the presentation, especially about the grad club. You're welcome. Go and check it out. Lots of great stuff on there. Do you know of any employers that require the graduates with exemptions to redo some of those exams when they're employed, despite having them? If so, why? Okay, so yeah, that's true. So there are some employers that, regardless of you having exemptions, they may want you to go back and take some of the foundational exams, or sometimes they want you to take all exams. So Network Rail, as an example, I think Deloitte asked you to take some. I don't know if it's all exams. The reason for this is they want to make sure that everyone that comes into their business has the same grounding of knowledge coming in. So you may have an exemption for something that you studied in your first year. So you may have completely forgot about that knowledge, but it's actually really key to that business. So they may say, well, we want you to go back and we want you to go and sit those exams to make sure that you've got that knowledge refreshed in your mind, because it's going to be really useful to you. So that's why it's really around what the employer needs and the skills that they need you to have in that point in time in the business. Another question. Let's quickly go up. Lots of questions coming in. What does it mean 3 years practical experience required for the CIMA qualification? So to qualify as a chartered global management accountant, and this is the same with all professional accountancy qualifications, as well as sitting exams, you have to have 3 years of relevant work experience to qualify. So to qualify as a chartered management accountant, it's not just about passing exams. You need to demonstrate that you can actually support and help businesses to succeed. So that 3 years is anything before, during, or after starting your CIMA qualification. So if you've done internships or placements at universities, part-time work, that can add to that experience that you need. But also you'll find lots of the graduate programs where they sponsor you to do CIMA, that 3 years, they'll make sure that you get all of that experience. And that's not just accounting experience, so that's business experience as well. What else have we got? Lots of questions coming in today. This is amazing. Can a graduate with many years of work experience apply for an apprenticeship, and how will this be received? So yes, if you've got lots of years in experience and you're a graduate, you can still apply for an apprenticeship. And for those of you that don't know, you can do SEMA through an apprenticeship now. So an employer can receive government funding to do the full SEMA qualification. This is the, if you've got lots of experience, it doesn't matter. If the apprenticeship is giving you substantial new skills like the SEMA qualification, then it's relevant to you. And this is the whole purpose of the change in apprenticeships over recent years, is to give anyone at any part of their career. So there's no upper age limit. You have to be over the age of 16 to do an apprenticeship. So it's really about people that want to change careers, not only your graduates and your school leavers. So absolutely, you can do an apprenticeship at any age now. Is there a specific visa provided if I want to do the SEMA qualification in the UK after I graduate, international student? So SEMA don't provide you with a visa. The visa would come from either the employer that you're working for. So if you work for an employer who's sponsoring you to do SEMA, they would provide you with the working visa. Or you may have a university that is providing a course for you. So as part of a master's degree, as an example, you can study SEMA. Some universities are considering full-time SEMA, so they would provide you with the study visa for you to do that. It wouldn't be directly with SEMA. Very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. That's very kind. So we're past 1 o'clock, so we've gone way over time, but hopefully it's been useful. Hopefully it gives you lots of confidence in going into a video interview. Like I said at the beginning, is the basis of preparing for a video interview is no different to any other interview that you're ever going to do. So prepare for it in the same way. Do your research, do your practice. And then, as you can see for the video interview, it's just a few tweaks. You know, your camera, your lighting, your tech, your sound, and then you'll absolutely smash it. So thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe, take care, and yeah, speak to you in the near future. Thank you very much.